रहता है इंतजार। मलयाचल के आंचल से विंध्याचल के आंगन तक, ब्रह्मपुत्र के घाट से हिमालय के विस्तार तक होती है मन की बात प्रधानमंत्री के साथ। तो सुनिए इस महीने 30 जनवरी सुबह 11:30 बजे मन की बात आकाशवाणी और दूरदर्शन के सभी चैनलों पर। आप भी माननीय प्रधानमंत्री के मन की बात का हिस्सा बन सकते हैं। इसके लिए आप अपने सुझाव पोस्ट बॉक्स नंबर 111 आकाशवाणी दिल्ली पर भेज सकते हैं या फिर नमो ऐप या माईगॉव की ओपन फोरम में पोस्ट कर सकते हैं। तो याद रखें, रविवार 30 जनवरी सुबह 11:30 बजे मन की बात।
In India, people in the age group of 15 to 29 years comprise almost 25% of the country's population. However, they account for 31% of AIDS burden. This clearly indicates that young people are at a high risk of contracting HIV infection. So be responsible, be the change. Get tested to know your HIV status. Download the NACO AIDS app or dial 1097 for more information on HIV and AIDS.
Hello viewers, and a warm round of welcome to each and every one of you to a very special program today. Yes, it is special because we are celebrating the 50 glorious golden years of the state of Meghalaya. That is right, we are in a panel discussion today and the topic is 50 years of statehood, the road ahead. It is indeed a momentous occasion. Why not? Because the state of Meghalaya celebrates 50 years of its statehood. It achieved this feat long ago, that is on the 21st of January 1972, when the state of Meghalaya was added as the 22nd state in the Indian territory. And since 1972, the state has come a long way indeed. Of course, we are blessed with a picturesque, colorful, vibrant state with gushing streams, meandering streams, hills, valleys, you name it, we all have it here. It looks so beautiful, and added to it, of course, we have the colorful and the vibrant people who adds more color, almost like a multi-hued spectrum of the colors of the rainbow. Well, today we will be talking about the state. We will be talking about the glorious achievements we have achieved since the last 50 years, be it in different sectors, be it in the sector of music, be it in the sector of art, be it in education, be it in youth development. We have seen successes also in music, in sports, in health, and not to forget the unique matrilineal system of society that is so unique that we have it here in the society, in the state. While of course we rejoice all the achievements that we have achieved over the last 50 years, but at the same time we also need to look ahead as to what should be the approach, how should we go ahead, especially for the next 50 years, to make the state a more dynamic state, a state that will stand out amongst all other states of the country. And for this, I suppose, the responsibility, the onus lies on each one, on every citizen of the country, along with the backing that we have of the dynamic administrative setup that we have here that can forge the state ahead to greater glories and greater heights of development, of growth, progress, peace and stability. Well, we will be talking all on that, and I have a very esteemed panel here in the studios of Doordarshan Kendra to be talking about the glories of the state as well as the road ahead, what needs to be achieved. I will be introducing them in a little while from now, but before that, let us watch a short clip that addresses this topic that we have taken up today. We shall be right back.
Meghalaya, known as the abode of clouds and Scotland of the East, entered its 50th year of statehood on the 21st of January 2022. It has been a long and arduous journey to reach this milestone. The blood, sweat and tears of our leaders and stalwarts who fought for the formation of the state finally bore fruit on the 21st of January 1972. Much has changed in the last 50 years, but much more needs to be done with regards to progress in many fields. The health and education scenario, the economic status and employment opportunities still needs a lot of work to be done. Meghalaya follows the matrilineal system, which is unique in that we take the mother's surname or lineage. It is thus thought that women have a higher status in society. However, this is not the case as women still face a lot of violence and do not enjoy special status as is led to believe. One can hope that with this milestone we can right this social evil. The rolling hills, the babbling streams and rivers, the majestic waterfalls, the many mysterious caves, and not to forget the living root bridges for which our state has become so famous, rejoice together with the people in celebration of the statehood. However, have we really progressed as a state in various fields as much as our counterparts of the country? Let's have a listen and watch our expert panelists speak on the various topics.
Welcome back, my dear viewers. Now that you've watched the clip, I am sure that you've got a cue or two as to how this panel discussion is going to progress. So without wasting any more time, let me now go ahead and introduce our panelists who have gathered in our studio right now. To my extreme left is Mr. Sampath Kumar, who is an IAS officer, Principal Health Secretary to the Government of Meghalaya. We are also being joined by Dr. Amena Pasa. She is a professor from the Department of History, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong, and also the General Secretary of Northeast India History Association. We are also being joined to my immediate left, Mr. Mark Stone Lightclung, an award-winning social entrepreneur, motivational speaker, impact coach, and the founder and managing director of Avenues, Shillong. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome all of you to this panel discussion today, and thank you very much for taking your time out to be a participant in this program. And I'm sure that we'll have a good discussion today. So thank you once again for your time.
Thank you, Marshall.
Okay, so let us start with Mr. Sampath Kumar, sir. I think we all know that health is a fundamental index that calculates the growth, the development of any country. And it is realized increasingly now during the COVID situation. So I address this question to you. What is your take on the importance of public health, and what steps have the state health department taken? What kind of reforms have you introduced, especially now with the COVID situation since the last 2 years?
No, thank you for inviting me for this panel discussion. In fact, as all of us are aware, COVID is a crisis, and we are, seeing this crisis as an opportunity, to really look at like what is the importance of health, how actually we need to build the health systems. So we are seeing, especially the COVID as an opportunity to really strengthen and address the various systems issues. So when I talk about the systems issues, as you said, when you talk about the development, the human development, most of the parameters are the health parameters. How actually what is the life expectancy, what is the the infant mortality, what is the different what is the the healthy lives determines the productivity of the state or a nation. So
Absolutely.
so what the state government has done is that we use this opportunity to really mobilize all the stakeholders and come out with a state health policy which actually articulates the vision and the strategies how actually we can strengthen our systems. In fact, we can build on our own strengths. In fact, in the last 50 years, one thing that we must understand is that state has really progressed. We have many primary health centers, we have many community health centers, we have sub-centers. So we have an infrastructure that has spanned across the state, and that is able to provide health services to the people. Now actually what we are trying to do is that how actually we can strengthen that entire healthcare, not from the point of only curative healthcare, because often health means people always used to think that healthcare means like a curative part. When you get sick, we come to the hospital.
Right.
So the state health policy has brought out a positive healthcare model, which is a three-dimensional healthcare model, which talks about not only curative health but also talks about preventive health, which is a very, very important thing. So how actually we can change the behavior, how actually, for example, I would like to say one example. We still have a challenge of high cancer rates.
Okay, yes.
How actually we can change the behavior, how actually we can make sure that the tobacco consumption can be reduced. So some of this we would like to focus on the preventive healthcare also, not only on the curative part.
Right.
For curative part, yes, we are strengthening the infrastructure. In fact, that's one part. Then the third dimension is enabling dimension. What is the enabling dimension is that how actually you are empowering people, especially the women.
Right.
Because gender, the empowerment is key for healthcare. How actually, even to reduce the maternal mortality, what is important is that how actually, women's health is being improved. So we are focusing on all these three dimensions: preventive, curative, and enabling. As part of enabling, in fact, yesterday the state, cabinet has approved the state early childhood development mission, which is actually why is enabling. So if you invest in the early childhood period, that 0 to 6 years period, you can see a lifelong health outcomes.
Right.
So the children who get a better care during the early childhood care, they will live longer, and their cognitive capacity will be much better. So that way the state has brought out a policy. That policy name is called Mother Policy.
Okay.
Mother is an acronym, is essentially measurable outcomes for improving the health indicators in a holistic manner with women's empowerment. So this is basically that is the kind of a policy that has been brought. Besides that, we are also working on how actually the policy is being implemented. So for that, we are mobilizing, having kind of a weekly action plans that we are promoting, using a kind of a state capability enhancement model, by which in fact we could see results also. In fact, we from last year to this year, we could see that there is a 40% reduction in the child mortality.
Okay.
So that is something that we could see that, and we could see that the way different stakeholders are working. Earlier, there's one thing, but a very important thing is how actually different departments are coming together. Not only the health department, but also the social welfare department, community and rural development department, education department. So that kind of a convergence also is being brought. So thank you. I think that's briefly about what's
We will come back to you, of course, because there's so much more to hear from you. But then let me now come to Ma'am Amena. Talking about women empowerment, because Sir has just mentioned that they have come up with a new policy which gives a lot of thrust to the to enabling and to make women the center of the activities when it comes to the health department, educating women also when it comes to the health department. So I would come to you with the question, your first thoughts, what does it come to your mind when we at this day, at this moment, when we are celebrating 50 years, how glorious you feel, celebrating these golden years today. And then I'll come back with the next question to you. How are you feeling right now? 50 years, how do you think it's been for us, for the women?
Yeah, thank you so much, Moshmi, for inviting me and all of us. I feel honored. Yes, when we come to this threshold, there is a sense of, a sense of achievement, a sense of, that happiness that Meghalaya has come so far. But then, as stakeholders of the society, we have to be discerning. We have to see where the pitfalls were, how far we have achieved, how far have we neglected our people, because many of us are celebrating, and in fact will be having our own functions. The government will be having its own functions, but there are undoubtedly many denizens of Meghalaya who will not even bother to understand or to think what is the celebration all about. And you don't blame them, because they have barely 2 meals a day. It's difficult to eke out a living for most of them, So it differs from people to people, from group to group, from individual to individual. For some, there's a sense of elation. For some, there's a sense of depression. And especially the pandemic, you don't blame the government. The pandemic has created havoc worldwide. And many entrepreneurs, and computer professionals, they've lost their jobs. I mean, young people in their prime who should be contributing to society. So it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed feeling,
Right,
yes.
right. Absolutely. I'll be coming back to the question a little while later. Then now bringing in Mark to this discussion. Mark, glad that you're here. You are a job creator, you are empowering youth, you give skills to them. There are a sizable section of our youth who are unemployed, and this has actually multiplied quite a bit, especially since the last 2 years. Our education scenario has literally gone for a toss. It has become so different from what it used to be once upon a time with the online mode of learning that we have now adopted. But then when we are talking about the youth of the state, they need jobs. There are so many of them are still unemployed. It creates frustration. So what is your take on promoting entrepreneurship? Do you see it as a big step towards providing jobs and therefore reducing that kind of frustration that is slowly sinking and setting into our youths?
Maushami, I'm first of all very grateful that you've actually chosen to use that pivot to discuss the future of the state. So we're here, it's Meghalaya at 50. Most of us are elated about the fact that we are here. We've come this far, and there is a journey to be built on based on milestones that we have achieved in the last few years especially. But the measure, I believe, of any community's progress is the success of its private enterprise. I think collective prosperity for all begins when entrepreneurship is allowed to thrive. Now, I've used a very dangerous word here, allowed. The thing with government policy is there is only so much you can do to create an ecosystem that supports enterprise. Beyond that, apart from the caliber of the entrepreneur, her or him, whoever chooses to start something, what really matters in the long term is the capability, the capacities, and the tenacity of the team that's working for the entrepreneur, that's working with the entrepreneur. So when you speak about unemployment, Maushami, I'm wondering, there are many ways you can look at this. The first is, are there opportunities to provide jobs to our young people? The second is, even if these opportunities were to emerge, do we have the capacity, the capability, and the tenacity to be employed gainfully? And the third is, how many of our young people are able to self-start today and create something, even if it is experimental?
Right.
And to back all of this is this culture that we have spoken about for many years now. Do we celebrate the effort? Do we criticize the failure? And where are we heading? As a community, I hope that Meghalaya at 50, we've just come through a pandemic. We've come through a great period of uncertainty. And I'd like to call this period that we're entering now the pandemic of uncertainty. Where do we move? How do we get there? And what do we do to ensure there's survival and not just survival but thriving of all our communities, especially our young people.
Right. So what I understand is that you are also concerned, of course, you should be, because you're dealing with the youth, you're dealing with so many youngsters around. So we need a direction, we need the encouragement also, we need, the right platform, we need the roadmap to building a strong entrepreneurship, that mindset should also be there.
May I suggest, that this whole concept of providing a roadmap and providing solutions is where the problem starts. I think roadmaps, most importantly, if you look back and track back economic progress, business development, enterprise creation, roadmaps are created because of sheer tenacity and will. It takes great will to want to achieve something. So as an entrepreneur, for the last 22 years myself, my enterprise is entering its 20th year of existence. The year the state turns 50. And more than being proud of my own personal achievements, I am so proud of my team. The capability and the capacities of teams is what government, if at all, were to play a role. If private community operators were to play a role, it would be to increase the capacity of young people to decide for themselves that private employment has far more meaning and impact in the long term than government employment can provide you with.
Absolutely.
I
And they're
mean,
shrinking in any case,
with
right?
due respect to government opportunities, if the next 50 is not about private enterprise, prosperity for all, and economic opportunities through the private sector,
Right.
we will not thrive as a community. Period. We have to stop dependence on frameworks, on roadmaps. We use them to our advantage to see a proper path towards the future, but nothing happens without action.
Right. And I think time and again when you have addressed, the youth, you have gone to schools, to colleges, to so many people addressing, talking to them. I think this has been your focus, isn't it? To drill also in our children, in the youngsters' mind, that white collar jobs is not what they should be looking for.
But let me tell you, there has been a sea change of youth opinion as well.
Right.
If you just take the last 2 years, and Sir Sampath will, I think, sir, you will know about this as well. When the pandemic hit us, the amount of volunteering that took place, the number of young people who said to themselves, we are not happy not being part of the solution.
Right.
This is a matter, for me, I take this into our 50 years of statehood, that as a community of young, urban, suburban and rural youth are willing to contribute to the solutions. We're not waiting for answers anymore. And to my young folk who will be watching this at some point in time, to each of you who chose to create a small little bakery, to create a food delivery service, to open up a stall to help people with bedside attendance, there's just so much that has emerged. If you could do all that in 2 years of a pandemic, imagine what we could do in 50. The point is the will is there now. And this is what I choose to celebrate.
Absolutely. Wonderfully spoken, Mark. Thank you so much. Now let's come back to the health scenario once again, sir. Now, as I've been stressing it again and again that, as we enter the 50 years of our existence here, kindly share with us also how well has the state been doing specifically or especially in the field of health and providing healthcare services to all, especially in the rural areas. I really stress this, because we hear so many cases, that health has not reached, that pregnant women couldn't reach to the healthcare system, and is there sufficient and what more? And also, what are the steps being taken to improve the overall health indicators in the state?
Yeah. So, as to tell about the healthcare, Meghalaya has a peculiar challenges that we should understand. We have close to 6,800 villages are there. A state of similar size of population like Manipur, they have half the villages what we have. So what I would like to say is that one of the geographical difficulties, the challenges are already there. So that is one of the reasons definitely that's why that approach, one of the success stories of Meghalaya, if you see, the kind of a grassroots healthcare workers that have been built over a period of time. If you see, today we have 7,000 Ashas. Ashas are accredited social health work activists. So today, if you one of the things that we should celebrate, like one of the malaria, it was a killer disease. today, in fact, in Meghalaya, we have almost like handled, almost like a near eradication.
Right.
Not many deaths, in fact, 0 deaths. Very few deaths otherwise. So this has happened because 70% of the malaria cases now are handled by Ashas who are acting like barefoot doctors. Now, in a village, in a remote place of South Garo Hills, if some child is getting a fever, first thing the mother do as an SOP is that she'll go to Asha. Asha has got a testing kit. She tests and see whether she is positive or not. If she is positive, if the baby is positive, immediately malaria treatment is given. So some of this, for the geographical challenges, what we needed to do is that we need to actually bring a community-based healthcare systems. That's what the state has been working, and it has been very successful. Especially malaria is a big success story. Second important thing what state can actually feel proud of it is that Meghalaya Health Insurance Scheme, MHIS. MHIS, if you ask me, it is just even prelude to the Prime Minister's Jan Arogya Yojana, PMJ. And it has more packages, and in Meghalaya is the one state, maybe perhaps the only state, which is offering universal health care.
Okay.
So every resident of Meghalaya is actually covered either under Meghalaya Health Insurance Scheme or through the government, because if they're government servants, they would get the healthcare reimbursement from the government. So that way the health, these are the two things. One is providing that universal health care, and then that outreach, how actually we are trying to bring more awareness and how actually people can get those services is the key thing. So that's the demand side work. That is what actually we have been working. For that, one thing that what we have been actually seeing a great opportunity is that today in almost every village we have women self-help groups which have come through a National Rural Livelihoods Mission, NRLM. And the state government has come up with a very interesting program, as I said, Mother. Mother is essentially, the idea of Mother is that these platforms should be used to actually address all these awareness, behavior change related issues. So for example, there is one concept which is so important for the state of Meghalaya is that the 1000-day concept, every child and every mother requires a 1000-day undivided attention and care. What does it mean? So from one birth to another birth, the 1000 days period is required, so that the child would get the exclusive breast milk and also care, and so that the child's brain also will develop well. But suppose if that gap is not given, suppose you have a child this year, next year again another child without that space of that 1000 days or 3 years, what happens is that we don't have the nutrition for the child. That's why it's a vicious circle. So we are actually working on with these women self-help groups to promote this positive healthcare behavior, so that we can actually increase our lifespan. Idea is that how actually we are increasing the productive lifespan. So that is one of the, if you ask me, one of the vision of the state government is that how actually we can increase the health span, lifespan of the residents of Meghalaya for at least another 10 years. We extend it to another 10 years of productive lifespan by taking all this preventive and enabling measures.
Okay.
Martin, if I could, I think to add on to what Mr. Kumar has just said, I think one of the major milestones, let's call it a milestone, for governance today in the state is this idea that nothing moves forward without community engagement. The entire thesis, the basis of policy formation has to now include public sentiment, yes, but more importantly community engagement. And this idea of converging efforts, and that's where roadmaps are important. You have a guiding hand, but you have to have action, like I said earlier, through community engagement. And this is something that is very notable that's happening now with governance, and something that I also want to appreciate.
Right, and that bottom-up approach.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'd like to add also I was quite impressed by what you said about the community, self-help groups. Because self-help groups will give confidence to the women. This is a matrilineal society, but they felt the angst, that the men do not recognize their talent. But as women's self-help groups, they are in the element, and when they work together with the government, then they have that added incentive, added motivation. But what is what is very, very striking, however, when you said was that you're recognizing this holistic treatment is not just allopathic. You know, the government, I mean, initially about 20 years back, it was not really accepted that people should go for non-conventional methods. It should always be conventional, and that is allopathic. Doctors will really scream at you if you want to go for homeopathic or
That's why we have
Ayurvedic.
the Department of Ayush
Yeah, but
also
but now the government is taking very good methods for this, and it's streamlining everything, and there's a holistic, you know.
And that is very
yeah.
important, because in the rural areas, I think, you know, there is still a little bit of lethargy, I think. You know, they would first, because I have spoken to many doctors, and they would say that sometimes, I mean, I specifically remember speaking to a doctor in civil hospital who in the oncology department, and she says that, you know, patients come holding their ears, means the ear is falling off. Till that time, they were still continuing with these, you know, traditional method of treatment, and when they know that the ear has almost melted and falling, it's cancer, of course, and then they come for treatment. So I think this is a change that is required, isn't it, sir?
Yes.
To give much more awareness on this, right?
In fact, the customized, personalized healthcare is required now. So for that, we have a great opportunity. We must understand, for the next 50 years, one of our vision is that today the technology, the data and technology. In fact, you can have an artificial intelligence based app which can actually tell us like what we should do. So instead of actually, you know, we should not wait for, you know, till we fall. You know, actually before we fall, actually we should be able to take some wings to slowly land. So this particular, you know, approach actually is required. So that's where we are doing that in a lot of, you know, with the smart village movement. There is another project, you know, we're trying to bring some of these technologies. But yes, for the future, you know, what is required is that like we need to also leverage the technology. We also leverage the young people, what Mr. Mark is mentioning, young people. So there is a lot of coordination and a lot of proactive, you know, you know, participation.
If I could, so, you know, just to dovetail, I'm so sorry, Maushimi, I mean,
no problem.
we're taking over the panel here. But this idea, you know, of dovetailing opportunities, it speaks to the narrative of youth employment as well. Because when you spoke about what are the employment opportunities, you know, we are definitely suffering from a crisis of unemployment. It's not seen, but it's there, especially in rural Meghalaya. Now, our organization works with youth in every district, every pocket of the state. And I can tell you, a boy in William Nagar, for example, would be substantially different in terms of aspirations from a lad in Bagmala. A girl in Mairang would have different aspirations compared to a girl in maybe Jowai. You know, each of our youth communities are independently capacitated with certain skills, outlooks, and cultural upbringing that brings certain competencies to jobs.
Right.
So each district has its own unique competency that can emerge. But the big gap that needs to be filled right now, and this is an opportunity for every entrepreneur, for every young youth catalyst, if you're listening, the opportunity is in creating remarkable human power that can assist government with citizen-facing services. The delivery mechanisms are shrinking because of a lack of trained, capable human power. If you have individuals who are capable of providing, for example, you spoke about technology. In the last 1 year, without any infrastructure, without any assets, we have set up a state-level COVID helpline. You know, that is, I think, also a milestone for not just the private sector, but for governance health delivery systems, because now you have a way to reach out, and there is no fixed call center. This employs over 100 boys and girls.
It's a Uber kind of a call center. It's a Uber.
We've created talent across the state without bringing them to any physical office. And in the same vein, so we are now also setting up the talent to roll out the state's first ever maternal helpline, which is in line with the ECD mission. So these are all these glimmers of hope that have to be brought in, because youth are choosing to be more involved. And the big gap will be in the delivery of health services. That is a gap that needs to be filled by people who are qualified, capable, and willing to enter the system.
So let's come back again to women, Mama Mena. You know, you have said in your opening comments that, you know, it is not so rosy as it should be. Because I think we all agree that, you know, the rights, when we talk about the rights of women, the roles of women, you know, their participation in the public sphere, especially political participation. Decision takers also in their own, policies. It's men who are taking decisions. Women are not there somehow in certain areas. And empowerment and growth. It hasn't been so rosy. I mean, look at the, we still hear of so many rape cases. We are still hearing of molestation, and these problems still exist, right? So let's talk about this. How important is also to look into these sectors, safety aspect, empowerment aspect of women, also making them decision takers of their own, schemes of things that they will be actually following.
It's understood that a person is powerful if he or she is involved in decision making, but surprisingly decision making is left out of the proceedings of womanhood so far. And one would have thought that we don't have to speak about this in a matrilineal society,
right.
And we have our contemporaries, our friends in patriarchal societies envying the Khasi women, for her, her enviable status. But ground reality shows otherwise, like you said, and but I tend to take the balanced view, because it seems to be when you talk about women empowerment not being there, it seems that men are the butt of the accusations. They feel the brunt of the accusations, but there are men. I have to say this, okay? There are men who are understanding, who are conscious of the capability and the tenacity, or the ability of women. But on the whole, yes, on the whole, because education has opened the portals, not just to boys but to girls, and through the years we have seen that girls are making their mark. Just name it. You find girls shining and
but entry
excelling.
to the Darbar is still so restricted.
Okay,
right?
So women have been given the benefits of education, and they've been excelling. They've shown their skill, they've shown their capability, but men have not yet acknowledged the fact that these women have gone forward. And because of that, there's a sort of chauvinism, there's a sort of looking down and sort of restraining women from getting her real potential. So as of now, we see women, we have a first woman chief secretary, we have women DCs, we have women MPs, right? But that does not give the the overall picture. It does not reflect the real status of women in the Khasi society, because there are other women out there who are still feeling the pinch of dominance, male dominance and male chauvinism.
It may still be okay in the urban setup. I mean, we just have to go a few kilometers rural, in the rural areas, to see the scenario, what it is like. A woman is carrying, water behind, for the family. She's holding a child. Two toddlers are also accompanying her. It's a sorry,
really, but
picture, really.
Maushami, this is also a paradox. It's all in the mind, and it's a sort of sensitization, because in the urban sector, we, the educated women, have been exposed to gender studies, and so we feel that we've been deprived of our rights. But surprisingly, in the villages, women have been doing all that, and they've not been questioning it, because they've been sensitized to the fact that that's the role of women, nurturing and looking after the four walls of the home, whereas the external public arena is for men and the domestic arena is for women.
It's basically
so
the
sensitization,
internalization of certain gender norms.
Exactly.
So the gender norms internalization needs a change.
Right.
So we need some kind of an effort. I just want to tell you again, during the COVID time, realizing the importance of this part, especially the women's participation in the decision making of the public affairs, the state government has brought out a policy, reservation policy, for women in village employment councils. Village employment councils are one of the important community based organizations. We in fact they implement the largest rural employment generation program of the country, that is the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. And where now the secretaries, the leadership positions, in fact, are reserved for women in every alternate elections. That means in alternate elections, only women can contest. And in the rest, it is open. Both men and women can contest.
When did this come up?
It has come up in 2020, and today, like when we started, out of 6,400 village employment councils, we were having only 260 women leadership. After this reservation policy, now it is 2,200. 2,200, that almost like the jump is 100 times.
Okay, these are some good things we are
Yeah, but
hearing,
as you said,
right?
Moshmi,
Yeah,
women, you can say they are deprived only in the portals of the darbar, because the darbar is supposed, but you don't blame them, because in the darbar, the traditional darbar, even men with no mustaches are not allowed. Right? It's not just women who are deprived.
I think it's time now to bring in these changes. Right? It's time, isn't
and
it?
then we
50
have
years
the
hence.
age-old adage of when a hen crows, the world will come to an end. Because do you hear a hen crowing? It's always a rooster. So this perhaps is a subtle threat to women, that on no account should you come to the public arena and air your views, because it spells bad news for the society.
But then, ma'am, don't you think it's time now for this change to come?
Change is slowly coming, but again,
I
the
mean,
pandemic
when we organize
brought
certain women's program also, I mean, it's very hard to bring a man in the discussion. Women only are discussing women's problems sometimes. It is a little sad. When I try to bring a man panelist, he will ask me, is it a women's program? Oh, leave me out, Moshmi, you can take somebody. That thing is there, that why should I discuss? So that mindset change
more
is required.
sensitization, awareness, should be carried out.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's come to another broad aspect that we should be discussing, and that is education. I mean, since both of you are educationists also, you are from skill education, and you are from the university level, higher learning. I think one arena that has seen a sea change since the last 2 years is the education sector. I mean, the classrooms, the campuses of schools, colleges, universities have all of a sudden fallen silent. It's a very sad state, because they are just buildings now. Educational institutions, the life are the children, the students. That has all gone, and we have gone in the online mode of teaching. I think I myself, being from the education background, you and both of you, I think we know the problem when it comes to online mode of teaching. Initially it was very difficult for the students,
as
they
well as the
couldn't.
teachers.
Yes, for the teachers too. Slowly we have grasped, it is, we are falling into, that mold, I can say. But still there is a huge challenge still. We are not being able to, imagine giving practical classes to a child in the online mode. What is your take on this? What is the challenge? What is the difficulty? And what is the change that you see now with this in the education scenario, ma'am?
No, this is terrible. I don't know where to come in. NEP has 2020 has brought in the guidelines, and by 2040 everything will be clear, because these are just the fledgling strategies. But regarding the last 2 years, it's been terrible for the students as well as the teachers. I myself had to not just teach, but to worry for the for the welfare of my students, because one will call up, ma'am, I'm up in a tree in Maukarwat.
Exactly.
There's no reception.
Yeah.
And because he loves my class, he takes the trouble to sit there in the tree, and if it rains, he has an umbrella. So that is it. And then for others, there'll be, the parents falling sick, or they are falling sick because of COVID. So the onus is on the teachers. But there is a silver lining also, because with this we are more into the PPT mode, and we are giving PowerPoint presentations, and the students are glued. Because visual as well as audio. Earlier, most of us were into audio mode, but because we are not there, so we have to use this we can't use a chalk anymore. So we're using the digital mode. So in one way, they are benefiting. And in fact, there's one student who keeps messaging me, and she says, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry for disturbing you, but you're the best teacher I've ever had, because you know why? I somehow brought out the latent quality in her. She thought that she was a no good, but I encouraged her, and I find her so talented and so knowledgeable, and so and wise. And I've encouraged her book reading.
Right.
So I've given PDF forms, and she now in the class, she competes with me to upload books for her fellow students.
Right.
So it has encouraged learning too. But again, this online exams, it has encouraged legal cheating. I keep telling them legal cheating because they have open books, and
I mean, what
it's
is the
not
use
just-
of that? You know, sorry to interrupt you, but when I do corrections, when the students have to answer 5 long questions, there are 5 different handwritings. You know, and that means for all you know, the entire family is sitting and writing, copying the answers from the thing and submitting, and we are
noticed that?
supposed to correct that and give marks based on that. Just coming back to you, Mark, you are speaking this, you know, that the children could grasp, the students could at the higher learning. What about the school sections? You know, down when we come to the school level, where there is only one mobile handset at home, and there are 5-6 children. Both the mother and the father requires the phone too, and the children has an online study to do as well. How is the scene this like? Mark, have you come across this scenario, and therefore how difficult has it been for the children as well as the parents? Because the parents also equally have to do the homeworks of the
Very good
children, which
point.
are being, you know, assigned to the child.
If we start down this path, this is a whole other panel discussion, you know, but I'm going to try and limit the thinking to maybe 3 core areas. We're, as a state, you know, we're just 50. I think we fail to understand that that's about 2.5 generations, you know, of individuals. And the growth that needs to happen will actually happen now.
Okay.
I'm talking about, you know, the generation that's come in to schooling now. This generation, we can't do much to change what's happened so far. You know, it's a fact. I mean, digital connectivity
We'll have to live with that now.
and internet services, yes, is the great equalizer. It equalizes opportunities and provides everyone with equal footing if you have access to equal opportunities. But the fact is, we don't have equal access.
And I think what we have come to realize is the blended mode of education now, right? It has to be both the online and the offline mode. And I think slowly the children are getting you know, familiarized with this technology. The parents too.
The point is, Maushmi, if you'll forgive me, the panelists as well, as we head into the next phase of education, I'm calling it a phase, you know, we have to take the lessons from the past. The primary lesson that's emerged has been the fact that our young people have had to cope on their own with things like emotional well-being, with things like depression,
Exactly.
which is a reality, but it is defined so poorly. Depression could mean anything from feeling sad today to having a mood swing, but what is depression in its true form?
Mental health.
And how it afflicts young people more than it ever has at any point in history.
Right.
Third is the implications of responsible usage of social media. What does it do to you? Because while you have the device and while you have the technology, is it building or is it breaking communities apart? Is it divisive or is it inclusive? So I would say that the challenge for educators now in the next 50 years is creating 5, and this is the pillars of development that we believe in at Avenues when we run our programs. And we don't work in the formal education space. Ours is non-formal, which is creating capacities for life. The first is the mind.
Right.
The mind frames you use to frame circumstances in life. How do you think about life? What's the mindset you use? Are you growing from your failures, or are you being criticized and asked to step back? The second is your emotions. How do you learn to recognize and process the negative things we feel every day? The third is your ability to connect with technology, human beings one-on-one. The fourth is your ability to communicate. You know, are you able to clearly state what you want to state? Are you able to own your story? This is a beautiful phrase we use, you know, each of us have a story, we need to own it.
Right.
But nothing happens without the 5th fundamental pillar, which is action. How are we teaching people not to just set goals, but how do you get those goals? You know, how do you achieve them and bring them towards yourself? And if education can teach, especially so with the new early childhood development mission, if it focuses on changing mind frames from a very young age, we have a generation of leaders, self-starters and catalysts who in the next 50 years will be looking back and saying the biggest incremental exponential growth happened in this next 50 years.
Absolutely.
And I agree
Now
with that
since-
one,
Yeah.
yeah.
And since we are still in this topic, I would quickly bring in another aspect of this, and that is skill-based education. Because, you know, the thrust in our syllabi or the syllabus is so much on,
Yes, Mamsi.
yeah, is so much on learning the textbook and boring it is, and it is messy. You know, the children have no interest in all the knowledge, and so much of knowledge we are cramming, you know, in their mind. Of course, the NEP has come up with certain change there. Hopefully, it will come about and will be implementing. The state will implement, you know, in the next few months or years. I don't know. But then, how important is skill-based education, Mark?
Skill development has for a very long time been driven by central policy. You have numbers, you have targets, you have a certain qualification framework, and everybody must fit the same shoe or get out. And this is, I feel, a great challenge to our northeastern youth, to our Meghalayan youth, who have competencies in other fields
Right.
that are not necessarily mapped to the national skills framework. Which is why I'm very happy to see even within our own governance structure, there are policies and roadmaps now being created to address individual talents, unique spaces, unique domains that are privy and important for our state. It may not apply anywhere else.
Yeah.
And this is why the skills development mandate for our country has to now, I think, mature from being policy driven to being demand driven and conscious of the local nuances.
Cultural context.
Yeah.
Absolutely, sir. Cultural context. I love the way that was put. Cultural contexts that have to do with creating livelihood opportunities within the framework in which you live. So skill building has to now move from being a standard rote framework-based objective to being uniquely built by communities, driven by demand, and backed by public policy and frameworks that encourage community participation, but build skills that are more generic, that you can use in multiple domains.
Right, true. And that will interest the students so much, right? I mean, when you enter the classroom, they're bored studying, you know, the same topic and the same,
That's
you
why
know,
the NEP talks
you know,
about
chapters
vocational.
years after years.
That's why
right.
NEP talks about vocational, no? Because they have to, not everybody is destined to be or is marked
Yeah.
out to be a doctor.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can be a
yeah.
very good artist, they can be a very good like entrepreneur like Mark, right? Not everybody can be a good civil servant, you know, or a teacher. So NEP would encourage that. But like you said, you know, the emotional quotient is
So
very, very
important,
worrying.
Very. I think we can sense it. We can sense it
we are
amongst our
stakeholders.
students.
All of us, we are
Right.
stakeholders. So the
Right.
government and the civil society should look into this. It's the need of the hour,
Right,
because
right.
our young people, in their frustration, in their depression, where are they going? Where's the road that they are walking on? You know. So I mean, see, we have offline classes. I'm the student counselor, so I'm able to talk to them and they're able to ventilate the grievances and all that. But in an online mode, it's so difficult for them to come across. So I mean, for me, that's very worrying.
Yeah, it
The
is very
emotional
worrying
quotient.
because some of them have spoken. You know, they come to me and they have even said that, you know, violence at home. And because this also another aspect which has really increased, I think, during the COVID period, you know, the violence scenario at home,
Yeah,
domestic
that
violence.
too, yes.
And they are witness to that now. So what kind of impact it is creating to a mind, at least before they were in the school or in the college and they were away from all this situation, but now they're inside and yet they have to also study. You know, they are also having to learn in that atmosphere.
Mashmi, in fact, one of the college teachers was saying that we are bringing out half-baked students because they're not grasping. When the teachers say, have you understood?
Yes.
Yes. But when they say, do you need extra class? Yes. So what does it mean? It means they haven't understood, so they needed the extra class. But they didn't dare to say, I haven't understood. Please explain
There's
again.
just one question that matters. As a teacher, and if there's ever a teacher that watches this sometime in the future, when you walk into any session, you know, I don't need to be a trained teacher to tell you this. When you walk into a classroom, ask yourself, when I leave this room, am I leaving my students empowered for life, or am I just teaching them a syllabus?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is also there because
should
there
be-
are some who just wants to finish the syllabus.
know,
As
I
long
know,
as they are
I know.
finishing the syllabus, they are done
Yeah.
with teaching. Now, just
So
quickly
who
coming back,
are the
yeah.
victims? The students.
The students, right? The students, yeah, and we can see, you know, the results that comes also, right? We can, as Mark said, that this can be a whole huge topic. Actually, there's so much to talk on it. Actually, but then let me come back to you, sir, because this is a significant, you know, I think. a feel good that in 2021 Meghalaya secured 4th position among all states in terms of government budget spending on healthcare among Indian states. Please tell our viewers, sir, about the public health insurance. You have already said that, but what is, how big is this, and where all are these budget being allocated?
So, there is a strong will, there is a strong intent. Now we can see, because of the COVID crisis, it has brought a lot of attention towards the health sector. And even before that also, if you look at it, the way the spending, like we are almost close to 8% of the state budget goes into the healthcare. So which is it's a good sign. Essentially, as I said, we are providing the universal healthcare through Meghalaya Health Insurance Scheme. Now the people can even get treatment even in the private hospitals. And so basically there are some good private hospitals are there, and they can go there, and they can also get the insurance benefit, so that they don't require to pay large amounts. So that way, one that is the main thing that which signifies that particular.
We are almost running out of time. I'm very sorry to say this, but then I have to say this in every discussion. We are running out of time. How quickly the 40 minutes flew, we didn't even realize. But then, as we are almost concluding this program, I would like to hear from each one of our panelists short, concluding remarks. How do you see the state 50 years ahead, from now 2022, ahead in the next few years? How would you like to see the state as?
I'll start with, I see we have beautiful cultural capital. In fact, Meghalaya, the strength of Meghalaya is the culture, the communities, the community strength. And we have a great natural capital. So we have cultural capital, we have a natural capital. What we would be focusing in future is that cognitive capital, like how actually as a human resource, as I said, early childhood development, we use the research, science, and a lot of active community participation, parents and academicians and everyone. Through their participation, if we can build a cognitive capital, that is what we require, because the future is technology, everything artificial intelligence, and you require a lot of emotional, that we are talking about the need for emotional balance, emotional quotient. All these things will come if that's where I think I would see Meghalaya would stand, because we are taking those right steps.
Okay, wonderful. Ma'am, Amanda.
So briefly, Meghalaya and Mizoram we acquired statehood more or less around the same time, but it seems that Mizoram has surged forward, and education used to be, Shillong was a hub of the educational center, and now Mizoram is overtaking us. It's in the health sector that Meghalaya is doing well, and we are very happy. So what is needed for us is that we should understand our weaknesses, and there should be a general cooperation, solidarity among the government and the civil society, because no one can work on his own, right? No one is an island. So there should be solidarity, there should be cooperation, and where there's a will, there's a way. And people are very resilient. Mr. Sampath said, we have cultural capital, but we have social capital also, and we just have to develop the cognitive capital. So people are resilient, and they have to vote for the right leaders, and the leaders have to think of the people, not their own interests. And if that is taken care of, I see a bright, rosy future for Meghalaya. But there has to be the will, there has to be the determination, there has to be that integrity.
Absolutely. Intent too. Okay. Quickly, Mark, how do you see the state, and where would you like us to progress in the years ahead?
When you talk about looking at the future, you're talking about an eye for the future. I'm going to use EYE, the eye. E would be, of course, your entrepreneurship. Y would be youth, and E would be education. And if I look at these three elements, I'd say my personal dream, aspiration rather, for our state would be, is it possible that in the next 50 years we have one legacy, at least one legacy private organization that has stood the test of time, that has transitioned leadership over at least 2 generations of leadership, that has a 3rd generation of leadership coming in, and it could be in any domain, in any space, but to have a thriving enterprise ecosystem led by maybe one great organization that stands the test of time. That's for entrepreneurship. For youth, it is that youth are given more opportunities to engage with government more proactively in the creation of policies and roadmaps, that they have a place on the table, that they're allowed to state and also encouraged to state their opinions, and that it is actually taken into cognizance while developing frameworks. Third, for education, that we now have an opportunity to learn from the mistakes of the past and work on systems that build, again, this is a great word, cognitive capital. I'm very grateful, sir, for you having used that term. I think it's something that has to become the norm now. When we talk about cognitive capital, we're talking about the way you think, the way you learn, the way you act.
Right.
And if education can then take that into teachers, we've got it made. That's the next 50 years.
Right. I mean, hearing each one of you, it's been, empowering for me. I'm sure that our viewers who watch this program have learned so much, and they have got the right with leaders like you leading from the forefront, especially, sir. I'm sure that we are on the right track. We are there. We are going there slowly. And I think for everything to develop, for everything to grow, for everything to thrive, we need peace and stability. We cannot have these repeated, problems and some band calls and this or that, where the state comes to a standstill. That doesn't work. It creates fear. With fear we cannot grow. So we need to bring in all-round development, and we hope that we will be a much more thriving, a much more dynamic, a much more greater state in the next 50 years. Thank you so much, Mr. Sampath Kumar, for coming to our studio and telling us so many things of the developments that is going to happen, that is already on the track from the health sector as well. It's been a pleasure listening to you. Thank you so much, Ma'am Amena Pasa, for coming to the studio and once again, giving us so much of information, and not to forget Mark. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Moshe.
It's always good to have you
The
in the studio and to hear you speak. I mean, it fills you with a lot of energy, seriously, because I've heard you speak in so many platforms, and it's always there. The energy you have fills us all with that as well. Thank you. And this is the energy that is required, I think, for all the teachers. So, dear viewers, I'm sure that you have enjoyed watching this discussion today, and you had fun to listening to all that. Very many significant things have been spoken by our panelists today, and I'm sure that some of them you have internalized in yourself as well, because each one of us has to be a participant. If we talk about the growth of the state, it comes from each and every individual and citizen of the state. Let the state continue to grow and bring more laurels in the future as well. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, from all of us here, once again wishing you a very happy statehood day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Moshmi.